Welcome into the Robert Allen and Friends show here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. I am your fill-in man today, Patrick Wheeler, here with you on this Monday morning as we kick off another week here in the sports world and much more. Robert not feeling well today. We hope he feels better soon. But you have me for the next few hours here on Triple Play Sports Radio. A lot of good stuff coming up in the show today. We're going to dive into some NFL draft with Oklahoma State here in just a minute. Take a look at some of the players, where they're projected to possibly land, and some different stories surrounding that. TJ Eckert from KTUL is going to join us in less than 20 minutes to discuss much more in the world of OSU and sports and beyond. We'll have multiple fantastic guests this morning, too, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Show today brought to you by Brown's Bottle Shop at 128 North Main here in Stillwater. They have everything you need for these upcoming warm months ahead, weeks ahead. Perfect pre-mixed cocktails, new beers, wines, and liquors. Right now they have many new beers coming in for the spring, including new IPAs from Stone Brewing and 6 Point Brewing, plus several new IPAs and barrel-aged beers from Dogfish Head. Lots of new brewskis available at Brown's. And if you like to try different beers, one of the best things you can do at Brown's is to check out their sampler 6-packs from Woodchuck Cider or 12-pack of beer, Camp World Samplers by Sierra Nevada, and Brown's Bottle Shop has all of that available. It gives you a bunch of different options. That way, if you find one you like, you know what to get next time. We'll talk with John Franzman later on and see what he recommends for these warm times ahead of us, which I know it's supposed to get chilly here again pretty quickly, but hopefully that will be the end of it. I keep saying that, and then something else pops up where it's chilly again, so hopefully that'll be the end of it, because I'm definitely going to take advantage of some of these options I have now at Brown's Bottle Shop to get me ready for the warm months ahead. Perfect to pair with everything you do in the spring and summer. So I know many of you like to TPT. That is one of the things that goes down during the show here. Do not have that phone available, but I'll give you a new number. How about that? If you still want a TPT, you can. I'm going to change the number. Here it is. 417-489-0790. Again, that's 417-489-0790. I'll throw that out a few times. You can text that number, and we will continue the normal TPT line that we have on Robert Allen and Friends. Text anything you want, and we'll hit on the topic and take a look at it and dive deep into it. So one of the things I wanted to start off with here was we are very, very close to the NFL draft, like unbelievably close. It has certainly popped up really quickly here, which I know I'm excited about, especially after last year. And I thought the draft went down pretty well. I mean, given the circumstances, you obviously were in the middle of COVID, but the NFL, as they did with their entire season, was able to pull it off. And doing so with the draft in such a unique way, I think kind of set the tone for what they planned to do for the year. Because still at that point, many people were wondering, okay, does that mean that are we going to even have a season? That was still the question for a lot of people. And I think there were plenty of people that were skeptical that it would go on as planned, that there wouldn't be any interruptions, that you wouldn't potentially miss a game. But then, as we know, you get all the way through the season and you don't miss a game. And it's still impressive to this day. To me, it will most likely go down as one of the more impressive feats to ever be accomplished by a league. And I don't give Roger Goodell a ton of credit because usually he doesn't deserve it, but this time they got it right. They got it right with the draft. It was interesting. You got to see everybody's personal side because you saw coaches at home. You saw the family life. You got to see the different camera angles, right? You got some classic video of the dog that was sitting in Bill Belichick's seat, and underneath it says head coach Bill Belichick, right? That was a good one. You had Mike Vrabel and his children doing nobody knows what was going on behind him. It was hilarious. It was great stuff. You had Cliff Kingsbury showing off his multi-million-dollar mansion. It was fantastic. But this year you're going to get a little bit closer to normal for the draft. There will be some differences. For one, the number one pick isn't going to be there. And Trevor Lawrence already said that he plans on not attending. So that will be something that usually doesn't happen. And, of course, there will be different restrictions as well, but it will seem a little bit more normal. So with that being said, you take a look at who's going to get drafted in the first round for Oklahoma State. Well, that's Tevin Jenkins. And I thought I saw something interesting over the weekend here. Chris Sims, who does a lot of really good work for NBC, covers the NFL, and does a lot of good work for Pro Football Talk and that type of thing. He was evaluating some of the draft picks coming up here, and he took a look at Tevin Jenkins. And on the short clip that I saw, it was along the lines of him saying there's some questions on Tevin Jenkins with his run blocking because he's in the Big 12, and he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he said along these lines that in the Big 12, they only run it about 4 times a year. And when I heard that one, I was like a lot of other people, all right, I mean, you just clearly didn't watch the game. Right, you didn't watch the games that Oklahoma State play. If you think that now it may be that way in the past for some of these teams, but really, this past year, I mean, Oklahoma State usually ran it more than they threw it seemed. And so I thought that was pretty curious. So looking at his overall draft profile, you have a lot of strengths, and of course you've got some weaknesses with Tevin Jenkins. The main thing they look at right here with him so far is that they really like his ability for his instincts to show. And I think that's completely true. His instinctive feel for positioning and quick to adjust his blocks when needed. You saw plenty of that with Tevin Jenkins. And that's one of the things that teams immediately look for with offensive linemen is how can they quickly adjust to the play and use their instincts. And when a guy has those at that position, he's really valuable. And I think that's what Tevin Jenkins does provide. If he needs to adjust mid-block, if he needs to peel off and help, I mean, there's so many things he knows how to do at that spot that allow him to be one of those guys that are clearly going to go in the first round. Powerful core allows him to base up and flatten the edge for running backs. Wait a sec. Hold on. Let me read that again. Powerful core allows him to base up and flatten the edge for running backs. I thought I just talked about Chris Sims said he didn't. It wasn't that great in run blocking. Am I missing something here? Oh, that's right. Chris Sims didn't watch the games. I mean, there's sometimes when you hear something said and you're like, wait a minute, that you just didn't watch the game, dude. Like, we can tell. And I think that was a little bit exposed there. Ready and willing to bury his man. Yep, absolutely. We saw that multiple times. Plays under squared pads as a climbing blocker. Sure. Athleticism from smooth drift from block to block on second level. And that's another thing. How many times do we talk about offensive linemen being the most athletic players on the field at times? And Tevin has that. When he's able to use his athleticism, that is such a boost as an offensive lineman, as we know. So what are some of the weaknesses, you might ask, that NFL has, the NFL.com draft profile has on Tevin Jenkins? One, very short arms for tackle position. Yeah, that's fair. Lack of length shows up when trying to hit redirect block at the top of the rush. So that's maybe where Chris Sims was thinking. I don't know. I mean, that just, again, comes with him not having the longest arms. But that's something to me that I think what I just said with his instincts and his athleticism really does make up for at times. Could struggle to gain enough depth against speed rush. Yeah, but again, I think Tevin Jenkins' quickness sometimes goes underrated. If you watch enough of what he does, I wouldn't be extremely worried about that. Unless, I mean, you got guys that are coming straight at him, and their goal is obviously to rip through him. But again, his ability to adjust quickly is something that I think makes up for that. Some scouts voided concerns about football character. Some scouts voided concerns about football character. Interesting. Everybody knows that Tevin Jenkins decided to expose a little bit of his character not too long ago on one of the Zoom calls where a couple words were slipped out. And I think he took, whenever he was questioned and told about his toughness, he took that personally. I think he did, plain and simple. And I do also believe that there are some teams that are in the NFL. There's a good mixture here. There's some that are like, nice. Hey, we like to see that out of a guy like Tevin Jenkins. We need our offensive linemen to be nasty, scrappy, to not care who gets in their way. Their goal is to straight punish the guy in front of them and at the same time make sure their quarterback is never touched. That's their goal. We want to see that. Tevin Jenkins comes out of his pro day, and we hear that. That's what we want to hear. We like that right there. And then there's other teams that are like, okay, not the best look, if we're being completely honest. You know, we love guys with high character around here. How many times do you hear that in the league? We love guys with really high character. And maybe that right there wasn't so great for some teams. Now, you can pick and choose the teams that may like it and may not. I said the other day on record, for instance, I think the Las Vegas Raiders loved to hear that. That sounds like something that when Tevin Jenkins said, sounds like something that a Las Vegas Raiders offensive lineman would say at any given time, at any given press conference. Now, take with that as you may and draw your own conclusion there. And look, should he have said it at that time? No. I mean, but he's going to be an NFL offensive lineman, so I think he was attempting to embrace that, even if that's not his natural side, which it may not be. I mean, he comes across usually as a great kid, pretty intelligent kid, knows what he's doing on the football field, no doubt. And look, if you're in the league and you let a couple of those slip, no big deal. But you can understand why it does shy away some teams when they hear it right after his pro day, and then kind of in the manner that he put it in there. That's what I thought was strange. The way he was saying it wasn't natural. It was definitely planned out, and I think that was something that I could read through pretty easily, like a lot of people. What's another one? Longer defenders can stab and separate from him. Again, this is just all going back to a lot of his length. But his athleticism is something that absolutely will make up for a lot of these things. Another strength for him. Keeps hands back until his target is within range. Yeah, for sure. And he has to with that length. He lets guys get into where he can make a play on them. And that's just football smarts. Strong, sure hands, clinch up and stall rush attack. Capable hand fighting to recapture control. Solid mirror and redirection. He wins space. Yes, he does. Tevin Jenkins wins a lot of space, and he does use what he has to balance him out. Has really good balance for an offensive lineman. That's also something that sometimes can go underrated, especially in the league at the next level. But why now? Because it seems like every year we're talking about how important offensive linemen are in the NFL. But why now are they even so much more important? Well, because you got to see, I really do think there's a direct correlation here. You got to see on display in the Super Bowl this past year that even the best quarterback in the league can't do much without a solid offensive line. Right? I mean, Patrick Mahomes couldn't do anything in the Super Bowl because there was no offensive line there. Now, he was also facing a Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense that was incredible, but at the same time, that doesn't matter. There was nobody to block for him. It was bad. And that has been escalated now towards like, okay, we can't have that happen. It happens to Patrick Mahomes, it happened to anybody. So we got to hit on our offensive linemen. And if you don't, you're in for a world of hurt no matter how talented your team is. If your offensive line isn't worth anything, then good luck being successful. I don't care if it's Patrick Mahomes. I don't care what wide receiver or running back you have. You better shore that up. And it was kind of like a nice little refresher for teams, maybe. To see that on display at the highest level on the biggest stage, they thought to themselves, all right, we better make sure we hit on our offensive linemen. Not only do you have to hit on quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs, we got to hit on these offensive linemen. Because if not, we could get to the promised land and end up like that. And that was one of the ugliest displays I've ever seen, and a lot of people have ever seen, from arguably the most talented offensive team in the entire league. So, yeah, there's a bigger emphasis on drafting offensive linemen this year, in case anyone didn't know. When we come back on the afternoon sports drive, or pardon me, not the afternoon sports drive, this is Robert Allen and Friends Show. I'm so used to saying that. This is Robert Allen and Friends Show. When we come back, we will take a look at what TJ Eckert has to say from KTUL. He's going to join us here and give us an inside look at some Oklahoma State draft prospects. Also take a look back at the basketball season, see what he thinks about all this transfer rule nonsense going on, right? There's plenty of that too. All still to come. He's up next with me here on the Robert Allen and Friends Show, Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
Screaming out at the top of my lungs, 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 lungs. Tell the world that I found the one. Whoa, my baby's hotter than the golden sun. You make my heart beat like a bass drum. Listen to me now.
Welcome back to the Robert Allen and Friends Show here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. I'm Patrick Wheeler, filling in for Robert this morning here on this Monday. Hope everyone's having a great Monday so far. Joining me now, my man TJ Eckert out of KTUL. TJ, it's been a while. What's going on, man?
What's going on, Pat? You're on the. You're not Robert Allen, but that's just quite all right.
That's right. I'm not Robert Allen. That's for sure. This is a little different time slot than you're used to when you join the show. That's for sure. But TJ, I know you are a man of many talents, so this should be no problem with the adjustment here.
We're ready to go. We've done all the research needed and necessary to fill the request that you.
There you go. That's what I like to hear right there, man. Hey, we talked to you. Before or during the NCAA? I think it was before the NCAA tournament.
So.
I think that's correct. Yeah. So obviously a crazy tournament. You saw tons of upsets over and over and over. Oral Roberts with a crazy run, just one of many teams that were surprising a lot of people. But then at the end, you get what a lot of people, I think, expected in terms of a championship game with Gonzaga and Baylor, or at least close to that. And I thought, okay, that means we're getting the two teams that we probably all deserve to see play for it all. And then Baylor comes out and does what they did. I mean, did you expect them to win that big?
No, I too was hoping and wanting that matchup. I was, they didn't get to play earlier in the season, so it was one that I really wanted to see, just because I thought they were the two best teams in the country. So, and they played like it all season long. And
yeah.
No, I did not think that either team was going to blow out the other. I thought it was going to be, it was kind of like instant classic type games where it's just back and forth all game long, both teams up and down the floor running, and then, something close towards the end. But, man, Baylor just took it to them, punched them in the mouth early in the game, and that was that. I mean, it was an impressive showing for sure.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, defensively, offensively, everything, they had it clicking for them. But with Gonzaga, is it fair now to, and maybe not quite cement them as one, but are they inching closer to becoming somewhat of a blue blood here in college basketball? Because you get all of these, it seems like, there's guys that we all haven't heard of going over there, and it's easy to understand why. I mean, they play when nobody is awake half the time anyways and all this stuff, so you don't have a great feel for Gonzaga. But is it fair to say that with the success they've had, they're kind of turning themselves into one of those blue blood type schools where they will get into a tournament every year and have a chance to make a run?
Yeah, I think for sure. Yeah, they've Mark Few's done such a good job there and doing it, as you mentioned. They're starting to get the guys,
yeah,
the bigger name guys, but they are still recruiting their guys, and he's making it work. And you're right, the thing that happens sometimes with like the Pac-12 in football, when they're playing super late at night on Saturdays, we don't see them, and then they come out every once in a while and we'll have a good run in bowl season. It's like, wow, I didn't know the Pac-12 was this good. Well, yeah, they just play it, 11:30 at night here in the Oklahoma area. So Gonzaga's the same way. I mean, I know they're running through the West Coast Conference. Certainly is a powerhouse, but they're running through it, and they proved this year that they can beat high-level teams. I mean, they ran through their non-conference. Their closest game was West Virginia before the tournament, so maybe that should have been a little bit of a clue. Like, they played the only Big 12 team they played. It was a pretty close matchup there in the regular season. But yeah, they're very much a blue blood to me. Just super consistent. They they get themselves into the tournament. They're really not tested for about 2 months there going into the tournament, so they always seem to be rested. That makes sense.
Sure.
And then they've played well when they get to the tournament. So it should be probably a matter of time before they win a national championship, I think.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because it was immediately afterwards the argument being made by a lot of people. Well, they didn't play anybody, and I was like, that's just not true. You look at their non-conference schedule, and they beat a lot of good teams, and of course the teams they did run through in the tournament. I mean, I don't think that was fair to say at all for the way that they played this year, but it was certainly impressive. No doubt to get to that point with an undefeated record, but Baylor, my goodness. We're talking to TJ Eckert here on the Robert Allen Friends show, I should say. So we're Oklahoma State basketball. I was looking, for their performances in the tournament. I thought even against Liberty, right? It was like, not great, but they got it done. Then it seemed like, okay, you had Oregon State coming up next, and you thought, the path has kind of been cleared here at this point. No Tennessee, no Illinois. This is a good opportunity to kind of advance, and maybe who knows what happens if you get past this game. And then they showed up and played some of their worst basketball against Oregon State, but that certainly wasn't the team we saw previously against Baylor that ended up beating them there, was it, TJ?
No, it wasn't, and their games had kind of run somewhat into a pattern of getting down early, coming back, and playing really, really well in the second half. And so that was kind of what it looked like for them down the stretch there in the season, and they were making it work really well. And you can't say you were playing with fire, because that was kind of their formula for success. A little bit of a slow start, but then they would really play well there towards the end of the first half, and then the second half they'd really light it up. I think they just ran into a hot, confident team in Oregon State. If those teams played in November, December, January, I mean, that's OSU, Oklahoma State wins that game 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
But a team that was hot coming in, playing with a lot of confidence, and obviously was, the run that Oral Roberts goes on almost overshadows how good the run that Oregon State went on. They were so impressive. They played hard. They played physically. And in a way, they did similar to OSU what Baylor did to Gonzaga. They just came out and punched them in the mouth and kind of knocked them off guard. And then when OSU, made a run there and Cade scores 6 points in 8 seconds or whatever that was there late in that game, you're thinking, all right, well, here it is. This is when OSU's going to do their thing. And then Oregon State just punched right back. So, it was not their best game for sure. Obviously, you don't want to lose a game like that. And you mentioned it. I mean, it was disappointing in the fact that, then you take on a Loyola team in the next round, who is no slouch either, but it's not Illinois. Right. So you think about what could have been. So that's certainly frustrating.
Yeah, that's what we had said, is that on paper the path had been cleared. Now it still wasn't going to be an easy one, but Illinois was out of the way. And I mean, I guess if you're Oklahoma State, you could have done what Illinois did. That would have been pretty terrible. But for OSU basketball, I'm sure you'd have to also agree at this point it has to be a tough time for the program not knowing what the next step currently is, since they're still in limbo with the NCAA. Yeah,
and you're just waiting for them because of who was it, USC?
USC, yep.
Yeah, the latest one getting their stuff kind of waved off or just kind of a slap on the wrist. You're just waiting for that to come down for OSU. And like, why hasn't it happened yet? What don't we know at this point? What is? Yeah. Are we in the dark about something that happened and then just hadn't been released yet? But you would think that any type of allegation or sanction would have already been named. So it's not like we don't have all the information in front of us. So you're just kind of waiting for the NCAA to come out and do similar to what they did with USC. So that's definitely frustrating. I'm sure. Well, we know Mike Boynton's frustrated. You can hear it during his press conferences during the season. Whenever you got asked about it, you could tell he was frustrated. He did a good job of, not going too far, but you can tell it's a frustration thing, and I'm sure it'll carry over into recruiting, because it is hard. I'm sure it's hard to tell guys, hey, you can come here. We're probably going to be one of the better teams in the Big 12. I don't know if we're going to play in the NCAA tournament. So got to be frustrating. But you got to think at the end of the day, the way that the sanctions have been going recently, that a positive outcome will come of that.
Yeah, I would hope so for sure. I mean, it's funny. I think of Mike Boynton and the recruiting staff basically talking to a guy, telling him all the great things about OSU basketball. Hey, we got this. We did this last year. We can do this again. We got these players. Oh, by the way, real quick at the end, we might not make the tournament because we might not be allowed to, but just kind of throw that in at the end. It's like,
exactly.
Oh man, it's got to be brutal. But I also imagine, the NCAA, you got somebody over there at the desk with a ton of paperwork. He happens to see the OSU paperwork again on the corner of his desk, and another paper gets on top of it by accident, in quotations, and it's just a tunnel from there. So I know that I agree it is completely frustrating. But hey, assuming that Avery Anderson comes back, which I definitely am. I don't know about you, but I'm assuming he comes back. Does the game plan get easier, do you think, for teams that now can focus solely on him as maybe being the guy that's going to go out there and produce the most offense instead of having to do everything where they try to focus on Cade Cunningham?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's fairly easy to say that he will be the go-to guy and the top scoring option. So you can say that there's going to be more focus on him. But then, you think about some of the jumps that these guys have made from year 1 to year 2 or year 2 to year 3. I mean, M.A. Moncrief will take a jump, I'm sure. I mean, the Boone twins will only continue to improve. And then you would know more about the transfers that they just got than I would. But I mean, they're bringing in talented guys.
Yeah.
Rondell Walker's going to take a jump too. So I mean, there's going to be he's going to be the focal point, I think, for sure, at least on the offensive end. But then you got a bunch of other guys who really stepped up this year who are only going to develop in the next year. That's something that Mike Boynton's done a really good job of, is kind of developing talent when they're in Stillwater. So yes, I think Avery Anderson is going to be the guy, maybe late game situations, at least starting out. That's going to be the guy you want to have the ball in his hands. But there's going to be guys around him, I think, that can carry some scoring load too. That should help a little bit.
What do you think Isaac Likely's role will end up being next season? Because we saw him with the injury, and then after that, he kind of disappeared out of everything that was going on for Oklahoma State. And I don't know if that was some of it still with the lingering effects of that injury, or if he just could never, get back into the mix there. But what do you think his role will be this next season?
Yeah, it looked like without him, they kind of found an identity and were able to find ways to play without him. And so I think once he got reinserted, it was kind of like what do we do with him now? Which is not a slight on him at all, because he was obviously one of the key players coming into the season for the Cowboys anyway. But when you're gone for an extended period of time, you have to find ways to win without your best players. And then when you find something that works, sometimes when you bring that guy back, it's kind of hard to fill him back in there. So I think, Likely was so impressive. He goes through the USA stuff, and I thought he was really developing into a star, and I still think he has that. The injury really was the main reason that he didn't. I don't think it was anything necessarily with his game. I think it was just simply getting hurt. The COVID stuff was, I'm sure, threw a wrench into plans for everybody, not just him, but just the team in general. And so I think that he's still has the ability to be that kind of that calming presence, that guy, because he wasn't on the ball as much either with Cade there. So I think him being back on the ball and being able to distribute and do those types of things, I still think he's a great facilitator. I think he's a great he attacks the basket well. He's a good defender.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's a key piece of this team. If we can keep him healthy and in the lineup for an extended period of time, that's when I think he's at his best, obviously.
Talking to TJ Eckert here on the Robert Allen Friend Show with Patrick Wheeler. Did you like the Mike Boynton contract?
Yeah, I think it's great. I wanted him to stay in Stillwater. So whatever means necessary to get that done. I think we had talked about it. I can't remember when we talked about it, but I'm glad that they didn't just dump a ton of money.
Right.
I mean,
right.
I think you want to lock him down, and you want to make it to where he feels comfortable staying, and then you want to make it to where he feels comfortable staying longer after the next deal and the next deal. So you're kind of just, I don't want to say you're buying time, because that's not what you're doing, but you're keeping your guy there, and that was the main thing. And so I was perfectly fine with it. I think that it worked. It's going to work out great for him. I think it's going to work out great for OSU, and it gives them a peace of mind knowing that he's going to be there for a while.
Yeah, I completely agree, and it was good to get him back, no doubt. Let's take a look here real quick at Oklahoma State football in the draft. Tevin Jenkins obviously is a guy that's going to be picked in the first round for OSU. Do you think that I saw these two teams thrown out a lot with his name, the Pittsburgh Steelers and potentially Kansas City. With those two teams, do you think he fits? Which one would you say he fits in better with? Because we know that you've got Big Ben and potentially his last year over there in Pittsburgh. Then you have, of course, Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Which one do you think he fits in with?
Yeah, those are two really good fits, I think, in my opinion, because the Chiefs have kind of they're losing some offensive linemen. So I think that is a great slot for him there. But then, and obviously that offense is just fantastic. But the Steelers, Alejandro Villanueva is a free agent as a tackle there for the Steelers. So, I mean, you could look at Tevin Jenkins just kind of sliding into that role for the Steelers. So I think those are both, honestly, those would be ideal fits. I think he's a guy that, just such an athletic tackle. I think he's a guy that can step in right away and help a team. And then if you get into one of those offenses with those quarterbacks, with those pieces, I mean, that just seems like it'd be an ideal fit from day one. So that's exciting. Talking about offensive linemen, sometimes people don't get all excited about it, but these guys are important, and he's going to make himself a lot of money.
Yeah, big time. Tylan Wallace isn't the best pass catcher in the draft, but is it possible he could end up being the steal at that position?
I think so, especially with, it's a pretty decent, really good wide receiver class.
Yeah.
So in most years, you'd be talking about Tylan as a pretty early wide receiver off the board, and so I'm not even sure where they have him, fifth or sixth, or maybe even lower than that in terms of in the wide receiver rankings. So I think he's going to be a steal just because of that. I mean, in a normal year, he's a top 2-3 guy, and I'm not even sure if they have him in there in that spot. So I think I think he's going to be a steal anywhere he goes, and he's not big, so that's part of the problem. People just want these big, tall, freak athlete receivers, but the dude just runs good routes. He knows how to get open. He knows how to separate. He's fast, so he's got all the tools you want. And the injuries that he had in college are helping keep his stock down, which will only make him appear to be, like you're saying, under the radar, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no doubt. I think I've seen him a lot at mid to late second round, which does show you that there are a lot of really good pass catchers in this draft, no doubt. Yeah. How do you see Chuba's role developing at the next level? I mean, and do you think that it maybe hurt him not being able to one aspect of his game I know the league wanted to see more of was him catching passes out of the backfield and of course pass blocking and all that too. But do you think that that maybe hurt him this year with the injuries and not being out there as much as the NFL didn't get to see all of that come to fruition this past season?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's fair to say. I think he's and Mike Gunny hit on it quite a few times. Is he's still young is a relative word, but he hadn't gotten a ton of game reps. He had that one full season after just Hill left, and then he kind of had some injury-plagued seasons, and so I think he's another guy that's kind of going to fly under the radar due to the injuries he had in college. I still think he's an electric guy. I talked to him because he came to Tulsa and did some community service stuff for his foundation,
right?
And I talked to him about that, but then I asked him just some football questions after we got done, just because I like talking about football, obviously, and I feel like for how much the run schemes that they ran at OSU are going to help him a ton at the next level, because the NFL is starting to go to a lot of what college goes to in terms of the run game, not necessarily like the zone read, quarterback option stuff, but just the type of run scheme, the run fit, all that stuff is kind of becoming similar in the NFL, and so I think he's going to fit in well with that. And he didn't do a ton of pass catching, and he didn't do a ton of pass blocking, but he did enough in that system to where I think he knows what he's doing. And I feel like he may not be an every down guy, and he probably won't be, especially starting out, but he's got the tools to be that kind of guy. Right now, he's probably going to be more of a change of pace back, most likely, at the NFL level. But I think he has the game that fits a modern day NFL running back, and that he's shifty, he's quick, he can catch passes out of the backfield. We've seen him do it. He didn't do a ton of it, but we've seen him do it. And then if he can get the pass blocking, that's going to just keep him on the field even longer.
We're talking to TJ Eckert here on the Robert Allen and Friends Show with Patrick Wheeler. All right, last thing here before I let you go. So we saw the Masters and the way that it finished out and everything. I want to run, and maybe you can take this as a hot take if you want or whatever, but this is what I took away from the Masters. Because on Sunday, I thought it was okay. I mean, there was moments here and there, but I wasn't completely entrenched in it like I normally am. And I thought that maybe this season and this year, because Tiger wasn't there, is it possible that without the sports hero for a lot of people not being there, that the interest level was down? I mean, we saw ratings dip for the Masters overall, but I made that argument that with him not being there, and he's there's been times where he hasn't been there before, but it seemed like with everything that happened recently, right, with his accident, there was just more involved. That okay, some people are like, if there's no Tiger, I'm not gonna watch.
Yeah, I think that tends to happen. You look at ratings for just normal tournaments that when Tiger will play in them, that ratings are the highest for the first time since 2016 or whatever the year would be, and it's like, well, that's the last time Tiger played in that event too. So. I mean, he moves the needle. The phrase "Tiger is the needle" is kind of popular for golf.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's fair to say. Part of it was the fact he wasn't playing. Part of it too was the fact that there really wasn't a superstar type player at the top of the leaderboard.
Exactly.
Yeah. Number one player in the world, and he missed the cut.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody loves Phil. He wasn't anywhere near contention, obviously. Rory missed the cut. So all of the big time superstar guys weren't at the very top of the leaderboard pushing to win. Xander Schauffele is a great player and one of the more elite players on tour right now, but he's not a guy that people get fired up to watch. Now, Hideki Matsuyama, if you want to talk about superstars, he's not really a star here, but the dude is a celebrity in Japan and Asia,
mm-hmm.
and that's a golf. I mean, that's like the sport of choice over there in Asia. Everybody loves golf. Hideki Matsuyama is going to be like a superstar over there for many years to come because of this win. So in that aspect, it was probably great for the global game of golf. But here at home and for TV ratings, there just wasn't a guy that drives ratings up there near the top of the leaderboard. And that might have been the only disappointing thing, I think, for just casual golf fans that were trying to tune in and watch the Masters.
Yeah, that's the exact same thing I said as well, is that there weren't a lot of those familiar names up there at the top that people are used to, so it has something to do with it. I mean, I think it's the same with all sports, I mean, if you don't have your big-time stars at the end, well, then some interest level does go down. Now, if you had won the Masters like Matsuyama did, TJ, would you have made it a point to just kind of do what he did? You're on the flight back to wherever you're going, you're just chilling, the jacket's kind of just next to you, no big deal?
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt. Yeah, any opportunity I can get to take the jacket out in public, I would. Now, I would have been wearing it most likely. I don't know why he had it draped over the airport chair. I would have been wearing it. I don't care what I was, if I was just wearing a T-shirt or if I was wearing a dress shirt or a golf shirt, I would have had the jacket on anywhere I went at any moment in time. Yeah, that's a big flex to be carrying around a green jacket like it's just another one of your sport coats. But I've certainly been wearing it. There's no doubt.
It really was, man. Those were instant classic photos. All right, so before I let you go here, what's up with the podcast? I know you have one of your golf podcasts going right now. Tell me what's going on with that, where we can find it.
Yep, Plug Lie. Still find it on Twitter and Instagram. That's Plug Lie Pod. Plug Lie Pod. You can find it on Apple, Spotify, anywhere you guys listen to podcasts. We got the Senior PGA coming up here in about a month here at Southern Hills, and we're still doing a lot of things as a partner with the Senior PGA Championship. So we just did an interview with Kerry Cosby, who's out at Southern Hills. He's the director of golf, so he's basically the head pro at Southern Hills, but he's actually playing in the Senior PGA. He got an invitation to play in it, so it's kind of neat. So we talked to him about that. He's got some fun stories, and so we're going to have a lot more stuff coming out with the Senior PGA, and then just other fun stuff. Peter Uihlein just won, Oklahoma State Cowboy.
Yeah.
Just won on the Corn Ferry Tour this weekend, so we're efforting to get him on the show this week, so be on the lookout for that. So, yeah, lots of fun stuff there. We're really enjoying it. So Plug Lie Pod is on Twitter and Instagram there.
Cool. Make sure you guys check that out. Again, the Plug Lie Podcast, and that's TJ Eckert. You can follow him on Twitter at TJ Eckert, KTUL. TJ, thanks as always, man, and we'll talk to you soon, I'm sure.
Yep, sounds good, Pat. Appreciate you.
All right, again, that's TJ Eckert. Follow him again on Twitter at TJ Eckert, KTUL. And make sure you check out the Plugged Live podcast. A lot of good stuff there for all you golf fans. It is a lot of great interviews, great content, so make sure you check that out wherever you listen to podcasts. When we come back here on the Robert Allen and Friends Show, one NFL legendary quarterback just announced his retirement. Find out who that is next.
Showed you true colors, I don't like what I see. Story keeps changing, I know what that means.
Welcome back in, Robert Allen and Friends Show, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. We get ready to wrap up this first hour. Patrick Wheeler here with you. Hope everyone's having a great Monday morning so far. Breaking news out of the National Football League. Alex Smith has officially announced his retirement after 16 years in the league. In the video he posted, he said, quote, "I want to say thank you for believing in me and thank you for helping me believe in myself and in the impossible. Because even though I've got plenty of snaps left in me, after 16 years of giving this game everything I've got, I can't wait to see what else is possible." It was truly amazing what Alex Smith did. Comeback Player of the Year. Now, they should rename that award. I completely agree. You know, the Alex Smith Comeback Player of the Year award needs to be what it is because no one has done what he did in terms of returning. I remember last year, I said there's no way he ever comes back and plays on a football field again. The Washington football team couldn't in good conscience put him out there on the field. I don't care if he was cleared or not, but they did. And last year he came back. It was unbelievable. First play after he comes back, the Washington football team is playing the Rams, and Aaron Donald straight sacks Alex Smith. And the collective NFL world and viewership, because that was one of those games that everyone turned over to see that he was back out there, the collective viewership held their breath. Because, and that was what happened every time he got hit after that. It's like, no, please. Oh, please don't do that leg again. I couldn't believe it. The amount of surgeries, 17 different surgeries. They compared his injury to a leg getting blown up by a roadside bomb. He had to go through military rehab. He nearly died. The doctors recommended that they have that leg amputated. He said no. And then he comes back and plays in the National Football League again. Just remarkable. And before that, you know, he had some good seasons with San Francisco. He helped get Kansas City somewhat back to where they are now. I think it's a huge boost what he did with Patrick Mahomes. People forget that in Mahomes' first year, he played in one game. And Alex Smith, he absorbed all of that information that Alex Smith was giving him, and he credits his success to a lot of that today. And I completely agree. You get a mind like that, and that's why you see so many times teams like, for instance, the Packers last year when they got Jordan Love, well, we're going to make sure he gets a year or two of just sitting there absorbing everything Aaron Rodgers has to say. It's the same with Alex Smith, with Mahomes. It's crazy. What he did there was unbelievable. And again, he helped Kansas City get to the playoffs. I mean, he was good with San Francisco for a while. But what he did to come back after that injury is just remarkable. It can't be understated. It's something that we'll look back on for years and years and still wonder how that was humanly possible to make that happen. It's truly incredible. So he officially announces retirement after 16 years playing in the National Football League. I'll have more on Alex Smith throughout the week, I'm sure, and his impact on the league, on the sport, and just on the idea of never giving up. I mean, that's a cliche, I know, but he took that to the next level. I think everybody can agree with that. We'll dive more into Alex Smith later on. We come back here in hour number 2. We've got another special guest coming up. We will also take a look at we talked a little bit with TJ there about Tylan Wallace's draft profile. So we'll take a look at some of that, where he could possibly land, what he could bring to the next level. A lot of the NFL teams right now skipping out on on their workouts. Why is that, you might ask? Well, we'll find out. And we'll take a look at some Oklahoma State stuff in terms of their latest basketball commit and much more. Tom Dirato will also join us later on in the show, and we'll get Oklahoma State baseball talk going as well, as they had a rough weekend against TCU. All still to come. This is the Robert Allen and Friends Show with Patrick Wheeler, hour number 2 on deck.
And I don't know how we make it out when we make that on the low. Even if it rains, you'd rather make it snow. Both you and me know we gotta let it go. Laying on the ground, wondering why it's so cold. How we make it out when we make
Welcome into the second hour of the Robert Allen and Friends Show, Triple Play Sports Radio Network, with Patrick Wheeler filling in for Robert this morning. Show brought to you by Brown's Bottle Shop, 128 North Main in Stillwater. Brown's has new Pilsners, all kinds of blondes, pale ales, and lagers from Ballast Point, Black Mesa, Nine Bands Brewing, and many more. I don't know about you, but summer and spring really just screams pale ales and blondes and different lagers, and that's what I would go after there. They have plenty of options. If you like wine, how about this? Over 3,000 wines available at Brown's Bottle Shop, and they continue to add new ones perfect for warm weather. So make sure you come in, and I personally guarantee myself, you will find what you're looking for at Brown's Bottle Shop. Our next guest has his own intro. Take a listen.
Uh-oh! Someone had some daddy issues.
Nothing could be my father from the truth.
Who? You said my father. No, I didn't. How?
Did not.
Shabba!
For me, this is a dad issue.
Dad issue! Dad! Be dad! Daddy didn't love me!
That can only mean one thing. Rodger Wheeler is joining the show. The father hasn't been on for a while. Used to be on the afternoon sports drive whenever I was solo on that one. Dad, what is happening?
What's going on, son? I got to say, it is kind of special to have your own intro.
It is. Yeah, we built that in. It's been a while ago now. I know
big names don't have their own intro.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. I know you got to feel special. I got to make you feel special somehow. So there you go.
I appreciate that, and we have an anniversary, you and I, of today that you probably don't even realize.
Really? I probably don't.
Yeah,
I probably don't.
You don't. 1 year ago today, I was on your show for the first time.
Wow, is that right?
That's right. We talked about The Last Dance.
Wow.
This was today is actually the anniversary day of that coming out, and we talked about it. And so, happy anniversary, son.
Oh, happy anniversary. That's great. You know, I hadn't even realized that. I hadn't had a chance to. Part of my daily routine is I get to go back. I look at, have that app that shows you all the memories on your social media. So I'm sure it would have popped up, but yeah, I didn't have the chance to do that this morning. But you're right. I saw on Twitter someone had put out there, hey, this is the, last year was when we had The Last Dance come out. And I was like, wow, that's true. It was during all this time still where we were kind of just like introing into COVID, unfortunately. So it was like a nice distraction from everything. I remember that when we broke that thing down.
There was nothing going on besides Korean baseball, I believe.
Yeah, that's right.
The only thing that had come around, and we were excited to be able to watch that just because it was live.
Oh, man.
Between that and then, like you said, when Michael Jordan's thing came out, that was a big deal.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, it was only Korean baseball, and it was on at like 2 a.m. You couldn't even watch it really. And then you had nothing but every single sports show was just showing replays of games that had happened previously. Baseball was obviously not going on, and then the only thing to take away from it was the Michael Jordan documentary. Like, it was perfect timing. You had Tiger King dropped, and then you had the Michael Jordan documentary to follow. So I do give credit for streaming services, like Netflix and like ESPN, giving us those distractions, I guess, right?
Yeah, I have blamed you many times for my Tiger King addiction that took place about this time. As I watched and wondered why I was wasting my precious time of life watching. But yeah, I did watch a lot of that. I can remember watching Game 6 of the Cardinals World Series with David Freese's home run and the triple and over and over. It seemed like the channels just kept playing this stuff because we had nothing, and I'm so glad that much has passed.
I agree. It was very, very bizarre. It was. There was nothing going on in the sports world except for talking about what's going to be canceled next. Will we have this? Will Major League Baseball ever come to terms with each other, players and owners, and actually play? It was a disaster. But now we are in full swing in Major League Baseball. We had a full NCAA tournament and then a season, and the NFL draft is about to start. It's starting to feel a little bit back. Would you agree with that? Like with obviously the things are getting better around the country too, but for people like us, when sports leads the way like they're doing now, it kind of seems like, all right, we're getting back into that normal routine a bit here.
I think so. I think we had the conversations when all of it was stopped, that we would have given anything for them to play the NCAA tournament last year under the conditions they did this year, in a bubble atmosphere, limited fans, even with no fans, even your coaches masked and all these kind of things, these rules. We talked about, we'd have given anything for that, for the year that we missed, but it's still some of those things. It bothers me to not see full crowds at some events and things and all, because that is sports, and that's so many people attend sporting events solely to get out and to escape and to be in a different environment. Baseball games. We went to the Cardinal game last weekend, and just to be in the ballpark itself made you feel like you were getting back to some sense of normalcy in what was going on. But then there were always those things around you sort of reminding you that, hey, we're getting there, but we're not all the way back yet. And now I look forward to that. I look forward to the full crowds, and people having a good time and enjoying the outdoors of baseball, enjoying being at the Masters, being at golf tournaments, whatever it might be, and hopefully by the time we get to the fall and the NFL, that's exactly what we're seeing. Yeah,
I really do believe. You're seeing a lot of NFL teams, a lot of college football teams and schools announcing they plan on full stadiums. So I think that I'm really hoping that happens. I'd love to see more Major League Baseball stadiums like you kind of adopt that, like the Rangers are doing, for instance, before this season is over. But yeah, we went to the Cardinals game a couple weekends ago, and I think that it was great to be back there, like you said, and they had that environment. You had other fans around, and that was great too. But I never once thought in my lifetime that I'd ever be at a pro sporting event and I would look around and everyone would have to have a mask on or be told to do that. You had seats that were zip tied off. You had a bunch of different regulations in terms of what you could or couldn't do. There was no fan to player interaction, getting baseballs that signed and that type of thing. So that I have to think was probably pretty weird, right?
That is the odd thing. I was surprised even at that game to see, before the game even started, we did see Yadier Molina throw a baseball up to a kid.
Yeah.
And I was shocked. Of the things that I think of that maybe if you're trying to separate players and fans, that would be one of the things that they tell players you just cannot do. And you're right. We saw, usually down before the game starts, there's lines of people trying to get autographs from the players right down on the field, and that wasn't allowed, yet. But to see a few of these baseballs and things that are going on, I've seen replays of the situations where players are still finding a way to interact with the fans, and I think they need that just as much as we need them.
Yeah, there was a cool video the other day, I forgot who it was, of a Red Sox player that was down in the dugout and was literally having a discussion with some young fans about his swing and about how they should approach every plate appearance. It was really cool to see. So we'll get back to baseball here in just a minute, but I wanted to look at, I know you have some strong thoughts and or opinions on this new transfer rule going down in the NCAA. You had the transfer portal before, but just a few days ago they officially announced the one-time transfer rule where any player can transfer and have immediate eligibility.
I kind of feel the way about this that I do about when you and I have argued in the past and will continue to argue about the designated hitter in baseball in the National League. And I kind of have the same feeling, and it may be partly due to age, but I just don't understand why we think, it's better for college sports, and we'll talk basketball here more than any because that's what's happening right now, is college basketball players being able to transfer, without any penalty whatsoever going into that and being able to say, hey, and the one that I think of right off the top of my head is Brady Manick and his being able to leave Oklahoma, where he, as far as what I know, as an outsider, a good relationship, obviously a star, and he gets to transfer to any school he wants to, and so he chooses North Carolina, which, for me and you, that kind of makes that a little bit better because we like the Tar Heels. But it seems to me like players are getting the opportunity to free agent themselves and move from school to school and see four flavors if they want to before it's all said and done, and I'm not sure that that's what college basketball was ever meant to be. And anytime it turns into more looking like the professional ranks, I think we're in trouble with that. And I think it's a slippery slope that we're going down that may destroy the game. I don't watch the NBA. You know that. Yeah. I just don't care. I'll turn the channel. If it comes on, I'm done. And that's even true of all the players that I liked watching when they were in college. And, man, I don't want to see that happen in college, too, where I get to the point where, last year he was with Duke, this year he's with North Carolina, and next year he's going to go play at Alabama. I don't need that. I need to have some sort of camaraderie with my teams that I support, and I can't enjoy seeing these guys move around. It's going to be weird to see Brady Manick in Carolina blue next year after seeing him in the maroon for Oklahoma last year.
Yeah, when he posted that picture of him on Twitter, I mean, he did his best to give the full Larry Bird look-alike. I mean, it was incredible how close they looked in that picture. But I think that it gets really dangerous because when you mention the NBA, one of the main reasons people have stopped watching the NBA, now there's plenty of reasons. A lot of them have to do with the political turns that league has taken as a whole. But with the play on the court, the forming of super teams and things like that has turned a lot of people off. And I think that's where you get dangerous territory in the NCAA is if you were ever to get that beginning to happen at these Blue Bloods, for example. Not only can they recruit all the time, but now when you throw in the transfer rules, okay, so does that mean the top player that played over here and at school X, last year is going to come over to Duke? And all of a sudden they have a ton of good players, including the transfers. The same with any blue blood, Carolina, Kentucky, Kansas, you name them, that has that. So that's where I think it gets dangerous. But I believe that what you're seeing is the NCAA really, and I think they did this with the transfer portal, try to get out ahead of the whole, we want to make it seem like the players have more of a say. Because that has been something in the recent years that has really elevated is players coming out and being like, look, we deserve this, we want to be able to do this and have the right to say and do this. And so the NCAA giving the transfer portal and then kind of like this, and of course you have name, image, and likeness coming out very soon as well, I think you're seeing a more player-controlled, league a little bit in some sense. Now, sure, the NCAA can step in and do whatever they want, whenever they want, but they have that. It seems like now they are kind of granting the wishes of those quote-unquote freedoms some of these players are asking for.
Well, it's throwing a bone to them in my judgment. I think you're trying, like you're saying, you're trying to tell them, hey, we know you've got lots of wants and desires as college athletes, and here's one thing we're going to give you. Maybe it'll quiet you down a little bit if we give you a bone to play with here for a while, and then we can do some other things later. We'll just do a little bit at a time here. And like you said, it develops the super teams, and there's enough college, athletes out there, even in just men's basketball, to go around. We learned that every NCAA tournament when all of a sudden there are names that we don't even know, and all of a sudden they're superstars. But I think it's going to affect, beyond just the players themselves, I think it's going to affect coaching. It's going to affect recruiting for sure, because it does you no good to go recruit, a five-tool athlete to come play at your school, when you're living with the fear that he's going to play a year, and if he's not going to jump straight to the NBA, he's going to jump to some other blue blood college basketball program. And I think, being a North Carolina Tar Heel fan, I think that's exactly. If Roy Williams could be 100% honest with you, he would tell you that, hey, I can't coach this style of play. I'm not here for the one and done college athletes. I want to, develop a family. I want to develop a program around the talent I've got, not what changes every year. And I think that's been Duke's downfall in the last few years. Is Mike Krzyzewski said, this is harder than I thought it might be, to coach these guys for 1 year and start all over every time. And that's why I think you see some success at these schools like Loyola, Oral Roberts, schools that these kids go through for 4 years, and hey, by the time they're seniors, they've got it down and they're ready to take on the Blue Bloods and create some upsets come tournament time.
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to ask you next, was because I made that point as well with Roy Williams retiring. I threw it in with Lon Kruger too. Now he might have retired at any time, no matter what, either way, just based off what he's done and everything. But those are two old school coaches, and I have to think that, for instance, 5 years ago, we saw Roy Williams say he hopes to coach until he can't coach anymore. And I think that statement was left open to interpretation because part of it meant, I think if things continue to change like they do, and with the transfer portal and this rule and everything, he saw Walker Kessler leave. I think that was a big deal to him to see that happen. And I think it's absolutely spot on that part of the reason he retired and maybe Lon Kruger, and who knows, maybe down the road someone like Jim Boeheim, maybe Coach K eventually, guys like Calipari, Bill Self. I mean, just old school coaches that have been around for a long time, these Blue Bloods, will they be able to adapt to knowing that, okay, I went out and personally helped recruit this 5-star, this really talented player, but I have to basically approach it as he will only be here for a year, because there's absolute reason to believe that at any time, if he's not satisfied or happy with what's going on here, he now has the ability to basically get out of here, and I'm left going from a year-to-year basis recruiting new guys. So I completely agree. I think that has a lot to do with the coaches that we've seen leave, and potentially, I don't know, do you agree that maybe some of those guys I mentioned, I think Jim Boeheim is one of the ones I think of mostly because he has been there so long that he could be the next out, that maybe they don't want to attempt to adapt to this style, because that's a huge adjustment they're going to have to make.
Well, it's the adjustment of being the kind of coach that literally puts in new things every year for your program, and you're developing a team that when they came in as 18-year-olds, they're a lot different at 22 in what they can do. And Villanova was able to keep some of those guys a few years back to play their juniors and senior season, and man, they were untouchable. It's kind of Gonzaga is able to keep these guys through the program.
Yep.
And by the time they're 22-year-olds, they're much better at running the type of offense and defense that these coaches that you're talking about have put together, and it's going to change it. Yes, I believe the snowball effect will only grow, and coaches are going to become younger. That's why you're seeing teams, that are hiring these younger coaches, because they were a part of this too, and they didn't play, 4 years at college either. They went to the pros after 1 year, and they understand the system of, okay, here's who I have this year. What do I need to do to make this the best we can be this year? Because these guys are all hightailing it out of here after this year anyway. And that's a style that's going to be difficult to fall in love with as you're trying to watch college basketball year in and year out. And I've got friends who are Kentucky fans who talk about it all the time, that they don't let themselves get too committed to the individual players, but they let themselves get as committed as they can to the Kentucky Blue and support the university and whatever program they put out there. But no, I'm not going to get close to those players, and think of them as part of my family, because they're not going to be here long enough to be my family.
Yeah, it's a good point. Let's flip over to Major League Baseball here real quick. We mentioned the Cardinals. Man, they're just they are the definition of hot and cold, because when they're on, they're really on. They can score a lot of runs and they can pitch well at times. But when they're not, like yesterday, for instance, wow, it's really bad.
Yeah, this team, maybe we've become accustomed to this a little bit in the last, basically since 2011. The mediocrity that they put out on the field. And when the season started, my major concern as we opened on April 1st was pitching, and all I kept hearing from all the baseball writers and all was that the Cardinals had one of the top 5 pitching staffs out there. Now, I agree that we have one of the best bullpens that baseball can put out against us, but I never felt good about these starters, and to me, that's where you start. You got to have starters that are going to go more than 3, 4, 5 innings in a game, because then your stellar bullpen has to work so much that they become average. And I think that, number one, has to be fixed. I think you have to figure out that, obviously Dakota Hudson being injured is not helping situations. Miles Michaelis being hurt doesn't help. Carlos Martinez, we've said it a million times, Carlos, to me, has no-hitter stuff every single game he pitches, but it doesn't seem to gel for a number of innings together.
No.
If it ever did, he's going to be, he could throw a no-hitter, and it may be against us because the Cardinals are going to get tired of it here pretty soon, and he's going to get either let go, or he's going to be traded, and then we're going to face him, and he's going to have his stellar stuff because he has some incredible an arm unlike any other, and I know that's why they keep hanging on to it. But then as the season kind of got rolling, to me, all of a sudden you realize we're putting a AAA, if not AA outfield on the field, and that just will not do in the major leagues over a lengthy amount of time. And I've never been a huge Harrison Bader fan. Once he made it to the major league, saw him play many a time in Springfield in AA, and thought he was the second coming of Willie Wilson. That just had incredible talent both at the plate and in the field, and the speed and all that went with it. But golly, once he got hurt, now I wish he was there because I don't see a whole lot. Dylan Carlson is going to play, and he needs to play on a daily basis. But the other 2 guys really should be playing probably in single A or double A baseball.
Yeah, and speaking of St. Louis, I completely agree, by the way, with the pitching. I mean, it's especially Carlos. Every time you go out there, like, man, he could be really good, but he can't get out of his own head. How incredible is it to see Yadier Molina continue to do what he does? I mean, he year in and year out, he's still hitting the ball well. He's hitting home runs now. He's batting cleanup. He's like 100 years old in Major League Baseball, and then he's catching at a high level. How incredible is that?
It was funny because they talked about the fact that Paul DeJong was going to hit cleanup and protect Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado, and how important that was going to be. And then obviously Paul DeJong was not able to do that to start the season, and Yachty volunteered, and said, "Hey, put me at 4." And I think from the stuff I've read about it, Mike Schilt laughed at him, and he said, "Give me a shot. Let me show you. I can hit cleanup." And that's the side of his game that we call the icing on the cake. If he could just get a few base hits here and there, put bat on ball, and yet here he is leading the team in average and home runs and all these things as the cleanup hitter, and all of a sudden the icing on the cake has become his stellar defense. And that's amazing for a guy at his age to continue to do that year in and year out. And I said last year when they were talking about whether or not they were going to sign Yachty for one more year, I said I would not give him 2 years. If he insists on 2 years, I'd let him walk. And I got to slap my own hand on that because I think you could give the guy 2 years and he's going to give you everything he's got, and it's obviously better than about 25 of the other starting catchers in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's unbelievable to see what he's doing. All right, a couple quick things before we get you out of here. The NFL draft just days away. Really excited about that. Do the Chiefs grab an offensive lineman with their first pick?
I've always been of the philosophy, if you have one of the, say, top 10 or so picks, that you really are going after the player. You have a guy in mind, you've put stars all around his name, and you hope that he falls to you wherever you are in that list. But when you're drafting towards the end of the first round, that starts to change a little bit in my mind, and you look at taking the best available, no matter what position that is. Maybe this year you have to kind of adjust that just a little because the Chiefs have such a need for an offensive lineman. And, offensive, defensive linemen, they're in the trenches. They're the big uglies. They don't get the attention that the quarterbacks, running backs, all those kind of guys, they get, especially come draft time even. They usually don't get that type of attention. But the obviousness of what the Chiefs need was seen in the Super Bowl. We've talked about this before. And just not having a left tackle really changed the way the Chiefs' offense looked in that Super Bowl. And it hurt desperately. And I think they have a bad taste in their mouth. So I think they have to find a way. And they have done some trades and such to get some offensive and defensive linemen. But if somebody is sitting there that they've got those stars all around, if a Tevin Jenkins is still there, I wouldn't even take my 6 minutes or whatever I'm allowed. I would be getting him and inserting him right in. And there's some people that say he could drop that far. I'm not one of them, but if he was there, he would definitely be the guy that I would go after. Otherwise, I say you got to get if that guy's gone, that you've got all highlighted and colored and you practice saying his name and everything, then he leaves early. You got to get the best guy available, whatever position that might be, and then build what you need to from that.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of drafts as well, mock drafts that have him falling that far. I would be really surprised if he did. But yeah, if so, I would put a lot of money down that they would take Tevin at 32, no doubt, or 31, I should say. So last thing here, real quick. If you are the San Francisco 49ers and you traded up and you got the number 3 pick, that means you have the idea of who you want at your quarterback there. Do you take Justin Fields or Mac Jones? If you are John Lynch, Justin Fields or Mac Jones?
It's no question to me. I take Justin Fields, and I just like what he can bring to the game in that slot. And he, to me, I like Justin Fields more than I like Zach Wilson. So to think that I would take Mac Jones over a Justin Fields, never. Would I do that based on what San Francisco likes to do, what type of offense they like to run, and a guy that has many different talents. As long as he's healthy, I think he's the obvious pick if I'm the GM.
Yeah, I think that's where I've leaned as well. The odds have shifted again back in Vegas to that favor to support that opinion, so we'll definitely see. It's going to be the draft officially starts at pick 3 this year, so we'll see what happens. Dad, thanks as always for joining me. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
No problem. Happy anniversary, son.
Yeah, happy anniversary. That's all right. Thanks for bringing that up because I did not know that. Good stuff. There you go. That's Rodger Wheeler. Brings up the anniversary. Apparently, it was the first time that he joined the show a year ago, and we were talking about a lot of different things, believe it or not. Now we actually have live sports to talk about. It's incredible. We come back here on the afternoon sports, or I've said it like 5 times. It's just natural. When we come back here on the Robert Allen and Friends show, we are going to take a look at, I mentioned Tevin Jenkins' draft profile. Well, what about Tylan Wallace's draft profile? We'll take a look at that when we come back here on the Robert Allen Friends show with Patrick Wheeler.
Whoa. Staring as I go, I gave until my soul hurt, never told them so. Watching as I fall, somewhere down below.
Welcome back into the Robert Allen and Friends show here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler filling in for Robert Allen on this beautiful Monday morning. Everyone's having a great day so far. You're in the right spot here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Show today brought to you by Brown's Bottle Shop, 128 North Main in Stillwater. Deep Eddy, lemon, and ruby red grapefruit vodkas. They even come with their own pitcher now available at Brown's. Perfect for batching up drinks on your patio. Absolutely. Deep Eddy lemon and ruby red grapefruit. Screams something that you would sit on the porch and sip, enjoying a beautiful day, doesn't it? For whiskey drinkers, plenty of new distilleries out there like new flavored American-born whiskeys in peach or apple. Try Brown's new 10-cup 10-year whiskey or, and this is my personal favorite, Garrison Brothers Texas whiskey. Roasted pecan and roasted apple whiskeys by Revel Stoke as well. All sound amazing. Go check them out. We will talk to to John Fransman here in just a couple of minutes, and he'll give us the lowdown on all that stuff available at Brown's Bottle Shop. So real quickly here, let's take a look at, we mentioned to start off the show, Tevin Jenkins' draft profile. Now, Tylan Wallace, who I agree with TJ, potentially could be the steal at that position this upcoming season at wide receiver. And you look at it because it's so deep at that spot. You know, you've got guys, and this includes, it's not just wide receivers, it's just pass catchers in general. Because you potentially this year could have a tight end go in the top 5, which is unheard of. But many people do have Kyle Pitts potentially going at number 4 or 5. And it certainly could happen. But you have so many talented pass catchers that it's crazy to think. But yeah, Tylan Wallace is going to go mid-second to late second. That's how deep it is. And we saw a lot of good wide receivers come in the league last year too. And Tylan certainly, I think, upped his game too again this year, even with the injuries. He played well when he was out there. We all know. One of the strengths that he has, of the first one that's actually listed on his NFL draft profile, fearless competitor and plays bigger than his size. Yeah, absolutely. Because the first thing that is thrown out there when people look at Tylan Wallace, including teams, is, well, he's not big enough. That's what TJ said too. Yeah, his size isn't quite there. And he's right. There are teams that are constantly looking for those big-bodied receivers because the defensive backs and the safeties are so skilled. You have to be able to be a big-time, big-statured wide receiver to make it in the league at times. But if you don't have that physical gift, then what you do is you play bigger than that. And that is what Tylan Wallace does. You know, he can jump out of the air. We know that. He can jump out of the building. He can get up over guys. And then to boot, he's got hands that are going to be able to catch really anything around that area that you throw it to him. Fights back against physical coverage. Yeah, absolutely that too. And that's a huge plus. Because, and it's interesting because one of the weaknesses, actually the first one that's thrown out there for him, is he didn't see NFL caliber coverage often in his conference. That's true. I mean, that's just plain and simple truth. There was not a lot of competition on the defense that was stopping Tylan Wallace. He was constantly clowning Big 12 cornerbacks and safeties. And even in decent coverage at times, it didn't matter. So those two kind of mix in because he also fights back against physical coverage, which is something that when you get into the league, especially as a rookie, you're going to face veterans a lot of the time on the defensive side of the ball, and last thing they want is to be shown up by a rookie wide receiver. They are going to come up and be extremely physical with you at the line, and that's something that Tylan does well, is knocking off that right at the line. He's really physical. He gets that immediately with that first step. Also down the field, you can expect a lot of hand fighting. He's going to win that. We saw it in college football with Oklahoma State. He drew a ton of penalties on pass interference. That's something that he will also bring to the next level. Silky smooth attack game on jump balls is one of his strengths. Absolutely. Absolutely. Silky smooth attack game on jump balls. You throw it up there, and it's one thing to say, I'm going to go up there, I'm going to make a catch. It's another thing to execute it as well as he does, especially midair against tight coverage. It doesn't matter. He doesn't just go up and say, I'm trying to make a catch and all this. No, he does so at the highest level. Absolutely does so at the highest level. One of the weaknesses was occasionally he opts to look for the circus catch rather than working earlier for positioning. And again, to me, that goes back to not having a ton of competition on the defensive side facing him. Like, he was able to go for those circus catches. There seemed like, at times, Tylan was so much more talented than the defensive back covering him, or backs covering him, that he would offer the circus catch. It's almost like he just got bored out there. Like, I'm dominating, let me make a crazy catch here. And he could do it, and he did. But in the NFL, you take every pass that you can, and you make sure you get there to the spot, and you don't worry about the whole circus catch thing. That's just a difference there. Another one was, and I think this is huge, one of his strengths, aggressive runner after the catch. And at his size, he has to be, especially at the next level. That's what teams are going to look for. All those strengths right there make him such a steal at that position, because you can get him mid-second, late second, and he could easily, in my opinion, if he transfers over into the league and his talents follow, which they should, and his adjustments follow, he could easily be a solid wide receiver 2 for a lot of teams. Maybe down the road he gets wide receiver 1 status. I think he has that ability, but he could be a really solid wide receiver 2 and make you a lot of plays and score you a lot of touchdowns. He becomes an immediate red zone threat. He's a guy that he has a knack for the end zone, but running aggressively after the catch, that's something you have to have at the next level. When you catch the football, will you put guys on skates? Will you run through guys? Will you get a bunch of yards after contact? And while Tylen might not be the biggest receiver there ever was, he certainly plays like it, and that plays into his advantage more than really a lot of wide receivers you're going to see coming in. Because where he lacks in size, man, he does not lack in confidence, in strength, in a confidence in his own abilities. And that right there is something that any team would love to have a wide receiver. We come back here on the Robert Allen and Friends show, hour number 3 actually. We'll take a deep dive into. There were a lot of people upset with what the number 1 pick in the NFL draft had to say the other day. We'll find out what all the hubbub is about with that. Tom Dirato is going to join us and talk Oklahoma State baseball. They had a rough weekend with TCU, so we'll dive into that and see if they can maybe bounce back coming up here shortly against Arkansas Pine Bluff and much more. This is the Robert Allen and Friends show. Patrick Wheeler here with you on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
I don't wanna wait for our life to be over. You have enough, but you take it how you left it. This is give and take. Take your time, take me under. I wanna know, but you show me what I'm missing. In the plane out of Southern California.
Welcome back into the Robert Allen and Friends show, hour number 3 here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler filling in for Robert Allen this morning. Hope everyone's enjoying their Monday so far. Actually, afternoon now. How about that? It's past the noon hour. Show brought to you by Brown's Bottle Shop at 128 North Main in Stillwater. Just had beer guru Chuck Haley on. If you missed that, he was talking about a lot of their brand new beers and IPAs they have coming in for the spring and summer and much more. They have sampler 6-packs. I think that's awesome right there. You can actually go in to Brown's Bottle Shop and basically pair up and 4 to 6 different beers, whatever you want. That way you have a variety. You can find something you like, hopefully come back, and then you get more of that one option. It's endless opportunities at Brown's Bottle Shop, so make sure you go and check them out at 128 North Main. Again, all kinds of new pilsners, blondes, pale ales, and lagers from brands like Ballast Point, Black Mesa, 9 Bands Brewing, and many more. Patrick Wheeler here with you on the Robert Allen and Friends show, filling in this morning. And I wanted to look at, so over the weekend, it's never a full sports weekend until a lot of drama stirs up about a player getting ready to take his next step. And this weekend, it just happened to be the undoubted number 1 overall pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, and that's Trevor Lawrence. I mean, he's going to the Jags. Everybody knows that. It's going to happen. In fact, like I've been saying, I think you have 1 and 2 already taken care of. Number 3 is where it really starts with the 49ers. Will they go with Mac Jones? Will they go with Justin Fields? That's where the draft starts. If you turn it on at number 3, you won't have missed anything other than Zach Wilson going to the Jets and, of course, Trevor Lawrence going to the Jags. So Trevor Lawrence, over the weekend, he had said in an SI published story, right, which first of all doesn't surprise me. It actually still, I don't understand why athletes do stories with Sports Illustrated anymore, because they may come across, they used to be one of the most respected back when magazines were relevant, sports magazines ever, if not the most. Like, you got the best content. You wanted to subscribe because you wanted to see what the cover was, what the stories were about. They were informative. But like many other media outlets as of late, they completely shifted into politics. And then they get athletes to come on and they expose everything they possibly can and try to stir the pot. And that was the intention, again, with Trevor Lawrence and what he said. People freaked out about it. And to me, it makes no sense. This is what he said that people were freaking out about. Quote, "It's hard to explain that because I want people to know that I'm passionate about what I do and it's really important to me. But I don't have this huge chip on my shoulder that everyone's out to get me and I'm trying to prove everybody wrong. I just don't have that. I can't manufacture that. I don't want to. It's not like I need football for my life to be okay. I want to do it because I want to be the best I can be. I want to maximize my potential. Who wouldn't want to? You kind of waste it if you don't." Unquote. People looked at that and they thought there were some. And it caused enough outrage, apparently, that Trevor Lawrence felt the need to come back and explain what he meant. The line that I think people freaked out about is when he said, "It's not like I need football for my life to be okay." You get people that think, oh man, he must lack that ability to want to compete, right? Maybe he's not fully into it. He's about to be the number one pick in the NFL draft, and if he doesn't come out with that and say, hey man, football is everything, and it's all I ever do and think about and all that, and that might be what teams want to hear, and what some fans want to hear and writers. But is that honestly the truth? You might love your sport and love to do it, but I think what we saw here was a real, raw, honest answer. And you don't see that very often. A lot of guys spew out what people want to hear. And some of it for good reason, because in today's day and age, they avoid stuff like this, where people come out and can't believe what he just said. But I'm thinking to myself, really? We're now at the point where that's what we have to get mad at with a quarterback? Really? And to me, it's welcome to the NFL, where literally everything you say is dissected. What exactly was supposed to be the chip on his shoulder here? That you're the number one pick, so you have to go out and prove to everybody why you are? Oh. I think he's confident, and he's confident in who he is as a human being. And that was a raw, honest answer. That I don't need football in my life to be okay, to be happy. I have other things going on that I really enjoy. I just got married. I like the trajectory of where my life has gone and where I'm headed. And if football were stripped away from me today, I'd have other things. And that was a raw answer that he gave. And I think it's so rare to hear that it shook people. They didn't know what to think. They were fully expecting him to say, I live, eat, breathe, sleep football. That's all I think about from the moment I get up to the moment I go to sleep. And I am so dedicated to wanting to go out there and make sure that we win everything all the time. And that's just not realistic. You can be passionate and love your sport, but you don't have to be so into it that you forget who you are. And that's what Trevor Lawrence was saying. He came out with 3 different tweets explaining himself, saying, quote, I am internally motivated. I love football as much or more than anyone. It's a huge priority in my life, obviously. I'm driven to be the best I can be and to maximize my potential and to win. I don't need football to make me feel worthy as a person. Let me read that again. I don't need football to make me feel worthy as a person. He just explained it again in his reiteration of his original statement. And he's spot on. He's being honest. The same people that come out and complain that we don't get honesty from players and coaches are the same ones bashing him for actually being honest. It makes no sense. It's hypocritical. And if I'm the Jags, I'm not worried about any of that. I like to hear it. Why? Because it means I've got potentially a superstar about to enter into our franchise who's not afraid to say what's on his mind, who's not afraid to be honest. And I don't think he listens to the outside noise all that much. I'm glad he didn't come back and say, I'm sorry for that, man. I apologize. I shouldn't have said that. That would have made me lose respect for him. But for him to come back and really have to explain to all the boneheads that were upset about it what he meant, that's where we are with sports and people reporting on it. The only thing that he should have done different was not responded at all. He doesn't owe anybody an explanation for what he said there. He's about to be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft, and he was honest in his answer, and people are ripping him apart for it. I don't have any issue with it at all. Now, you really think he's not going to compete? You really think he doesn't care? You're not a smart person if you think that. That makes no sense. He was honest. We should be celebrating that, not ripping him apart for it. But again, welcome to the league. You know, you get some of that in college football. I think there are plenty of reporters that do that to players in college football, but not like the next level, where you are scrutinized for every step you take. Every time you blink, there's a story out about whether you blinked the right way or not. And he just experienced his first dose of that. And I'm telling you right now, that was Sports Illustrated to a T. They absolutely had to include that in there. Why? Because they knew it would potentially cause this, where people would freak out. It would be a trending thing on social media. Everyone would respond to it. Sports Illustrated is desperate. And I wish players would stop giving them the time of day. It's a magazine that's gone completely down the garbage. And athletes sometimes, like Trevor Lawrence, go out there and they still give them the time of day, and this is what happens. I hope this opens the eyes up to a lot of younger athletes that see this and think, maybe I'd probably think twice about that. Or, if you are going to say something like that, don't respond afterwards. You don't owe anybody an explanation. It's not a problem to be honest and say what you want. And that's something that's lost on a lot of people, especially athletes. And I applaud Trevor Lawrence for being honest. You saw him the other day. There were pictures of him at the Masters. He was talking to Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce were there. There were pictures of them. Like he's going to be a stud. I really believe that. I'm still a little wary on some of the aspects of his game and how they're going to translate over. He's not in the greatest situation with Jacksonville, but he does have a new coach. There are some solid weapons around him. There's not a lot of defense, though, and the offensive line is questionable. But he's going to compete. I mean, that's all there is to it. Another thing out of the NFL, by the way, coming up here in just a bit, we got Tom Dirato going to join us, and we're going to dive into OSU baseball and take a look at their rough weekend with TCU. So that's coming up here, too, in about 10 minutes. But first, another story out of the league. Now you've got about 2/3 of NFL teams that will not attend voluntary workouts. They've made that clear. They put out the statements. 2/3 of the teams, as of now, and I would expect that number to grow, have said they won't attend voluntary workouts. And that right there isn't a problem to me. Like, I know a lot of people think, they're lazy, they don't want to do it. No, it's not that. You know, they saw it last year. They got to do virtual workouts, and it was just fine. You had a record number again scoring, so that wasn't too much of an issue. Players seemed to hold each other accountable. And, you know what? You had a 17th game to the schedule, and that just fueled the fire. Adding a 17th game did nothing but fuel them to make this decision. We're not going to risk ourselves injury-wise on voluntary workouts. We're going to do our own thing. We'll show up when it's time to show up. And I don't have an issue with that part right there. Those were, again, something that people don't understand sometimes, negotiated rights that the players did. Like, that's why you have a players' union, players' association, to negotiate things like that, and they're exercising that, and that's not a problem to me. The problem to me is the excuses they're giving for not wanting to take part in these voluntary workouts. And they are going straight to COVID as the issue. In all of these teams and the statements that you see, they're coming out basically explaining that, hey, we still don't feel safe at our facilities. We don't like the precautions and regulations. We think that they are second-guessing a lot of things in the league, and they're not consistent. And as if that wasn't enough, they take it a step further and say, things are still terrible throughout the country with COVID. And that's simply untrue. Simply untrue. Things are improving every single day. Texas and Mississippi, 2 states that removed everything, just had new lows reported again in COVID cases. I mean, how can we say that the country as a whole is still having a huge issue with this? It's not true. So when you use that excuse, that's where anybody with a rational way of thinking and a critical way of thinking can understand, okay, they're just taking advantage of COVID. Stop me if you've heard that before, somebody taking advantage of COVID-19 and the pandemic and everything that's gone on with it. And that's exactly what the players are doing here. We don't feel safe, so we're not going to come in. These players managed to get through last season with virtually 0 major issues. Yes, you had to reschedule some games. Yes, you had a game on every single day of the week. But you got through a season with no missed games. You had positive tests, but you got through it. Nobody died because of it. And yet we have to come back here and act like the players are just afraid to come back. That's not it. This was an opportunity. And there are times, look, again, I understand and am fine with them using their rights and exercising those that they negotiated. But man, there's a lot of times when the players' union in every sport tries to take it one step further. And it's sketchy. And this is a sketchy situation here. Nobody in their right mind would buy that that's the real reason why they're skipping out. They're skipping out to avoid injury. I understand that. There's a 17th game added to the schedule, which absolutely enhances the possibility that you get injuries. It's hard enough to make it through a 16-game schedule with a full squad healthy, let alone adding another game. I get it. But don't come out and tell people that that's the problem, because it's not. It's nonsensical. Let them go out there and do their own thing. Let them do the virtual workouts. That's no big deal. But don't try to tell people that COVID is the reason. We're not going to buy it anymore. These are young, healthy athletes that have done the right things. They've taken the right precautions. They did so all last year. And you're telling me that the teams aren't doing enough? Am I really supposed to believe that your NFL team and your franchise isn't taking enough safety precautions to make you feel safe? Well over a year into this thing, and they've had a season under their belts to understand how to do it, and I'm supposed to believe that? No, I don't buy it for a second. And anyone that does, you're not reading between the lines here. The NFL wants everybody to believe that there's still a huge issue, and then no way, shape, or form can they get themselves to come back and do these voluntary workouts. It's just not safe. I don't believe it for a second. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people agree and see it the same way. We're not stupid. We're not stupid. You can put it out there and say what you want, but we know. We get it. It's not because of COVID. And to use COVID as an excuse and to take advantage of that situation when it is still serious for some people. I get that. It does affect some people differently. That's wrong to me. That's wrong to use it as an excuse and to use it as to your advantage. And the players that are doing that should be ashamed, although they would never admit that. When we come back here on the Robert Allen and Friends show, Tom Dirato is going to join us. We'll dive into some OSU baseball. Not what they wanted in terms of results out of TCU. A lot of runs scored, but it wasn't enough. We'll look ahead to Arkansas Pine Bluff. And we'll see what Tom Dirato thinks of the new transfer stuff going down in college sports as well. I have a feeling I might know his answer. Find out, though, for sure, coming up here on the Robert Allen and Friends Show. Welcome back into the Robert Allen and Friends Show on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler filling in for Robert Allen this morning. Show brought to you by Brown's Bottle Shop, 128 North Main in Stillwater. Arriving daily, new beers, wines, liquors, and pre-mixed cocktails. John Fransman, the owner, and beer guru Chuck Haley will help you pair everything you need and find the best options for you upcoming here in the spring and summer months to get your flavored drinks and everything else. Check them out at Brown's Bottle Shop. Joining me now, the one and only Tom Dirato, whose voice can be heard on this station in many different places. And Tom, I made you kind of pull some, or I asked you if you wanted to pull some extra duty today, so I appreciate you hopping on with me.
Well, instead of throwing a simulated game, I thought I'd just come in and try to have a real game.
Okay. Oh, that's fine with me. I hope you don't consider this as a like a doubleheader 7-inning type thing. I mean, that's I'm
How about that? The doubleheader 7 innings. That's all. My Matt's had a couple of 7-inning jobs out there in snow-ridden Denver and split with the Rocks, but I don't know. I still have a hard time getting used to 7-inning games.
And you know what I thought was kind of, I saw this the other day, and I was like, really? I mean, we're going to go 7 innings in doubleheaders, but if you were to pitch, I saw this the other day, a no-hitter through 7 innings, it doesn't count. Seriously? Shouldn't that right there tell you how much of a joke that is?
Even at, I don't know, I assume every place else, but at college, in Oklahoma State, we have in our record book, we have a couple of 7-inning no-hitters that we recognize. No-hitters that were thrown by 3 people. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to get a no-hitter. But to me, I mean, no-hitters, 9 innings, man. You got to go through the whole order and 4 times, and you got to keep from getting on base with a base hit. I don't know. 7-inning things to me are, I understand the logic when I say pitching, blah, blah, blah. But, 7-inning games, that's what you play in high school.
I know.
Yeah. Play that in the major leagues, for crying out loud.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. And for some reason, like, I feel like it's almost a no-no to take the stance against it, because everything I've seen, you always hear the broadcasters are fine with it. The reporters seem to be fine. I mean, everybody's like, man, if there's one thing that changed with Major League Baseball, it's the 7-inning double headers like that. We should keep that forever because it still seems like the whole goal is, well, we want to shorten the time of some of these games. We got to keep people's attention spans here. We got to make sure they're watching. But I'm telling you right now, Tom, and I'm sure you can attest to this as well, I've watched every single Cardinals game so far this season, and I have to think it's probably the same with the Mets too. There has not been one game that has seemed shorter by any means. I mean, we're still pushing 3.5, 4 hours easily.
Yeah, and if that's your goal, then 7 innings are not the answer. I think the biggest thing is they push because, as we've said, a lot of action in all levels of baseball take place in the 8th and 9th innings. And a lot of that action includes pitching changes and bringing people out of the pen to get out of a situation, to get out of the game. And that's 4 innings, for both teams that you don't have to allow for now. So you take a guy like DeGrom or any good starter who probably would flirt with 7 innings anyway, or Stroman. Now you get him to 6, and all of a sudden your moves are a lot less out of the pen. And I understand that over 162 games, but I don't know. I mean, to me, if you don't have that kind of pitching depth, then I guess I don't know where we've gone in all the drafting in the minor leagues. If you can't develop pitching depth to take you through 2 9-inning games, then I guess that's another conversation for another day.
Yeah, didn't I see, what was it, yesterday, a couple days ago, right? DeGrom had like 14 strikeouts or something like that. Was that the game where the Mets, like, they had no offense though behind him?
Well, they never have offense behind him. I think I saw a record, like a graphic, and I may be wrong on this, but, you know, he's got, when he pitches over the last 3 or 4 years, whatever it was, his ERA is under 2, and I think the record for the Mets is like 12-34.
Wow.
I mean, that's anemic offense. That's anemic offensive production. It's almost criminal. And, you know, DeGrom's a pretty good dude. In fact, I don't remember he ever just going off saying, hey, you know, when the hell are you guys going to score some runs for me here? I don't think he's ever done that. If he's done it privately. But, golly, I mean, but it happens, though. You can go back over history. A lot of your pitchers, better pitchers, for some reason, because you're hooked up with the other guy's best pitcher usually. Like, you know, we use the Friday night analogy, but you're usually going against the other number one, right, when you open up a series. So the fact you're not going to go nuts at the plate against that number one either, so you're going to be involved in tight games. But, I mean, golly, how about scoring at least 3 runs to see how that's going to work?
Man, no kidding. I promise we'll get to OSU here in just a second. I just looked at that. His ERA right now is .45.
And he's only 1-1.
1-1, 35 strikeouts in 20 innings pitched. I mean, that's. I have to think, yeah, he's probably internally just through the roof frustrated because he's given him so much on the mound. But man, that's speaking of pitching. I saw that somewhere in the minor leagues they're going to try to start experimenting by pushing the mound back. Did you see that?
You know, it's kind of like, you know, well, we pushed the 3-point line back in college basketball, remember? Yeah. And I think I told you when you just came aboard, I think, when that happened, good 3-point shooters, that's not going to make a difference. Now, you might be able to roll up some stats and say, you know, it was, you know, 42% before and now it's 39, but I just don't think there was an appreciable number of misses just because you moved it back, what was it, 13 inches or whatever the heck they moved it back. So I don't know if they're going to do a whole lot. Maybe it's more for looks, optics. You know, we're trying to help now, trying to help that offense. We don't want 12 guys striking out every game. But I don't know if that's going to make any difference because if you're good from where you are, you're going to be good from a foot back. Now, if you want to move it back 5 feet, that might be something. But no, I don't know it's going to make a difference. Yeah, it's
just one of many potential proposed changes. Well, who knows how the game's going to look in a year or so. By the way, I did see I've heard more and more that you might as well just get ready because the designated hitter is universal next year. That's what I keep hearing.
Well, some things are not going away, obviously, that were born out of last year's fiasco for a season. And, you know, I think most people could live with that, I guess. I mean, I make a big stink about it, but at the same time, I do think, you know, it's you can work around it. If everybody's doing it, gives you another stick in the lineup, and, you know, that guy doesn't have to go out there and try to move a runner or strike out like he usually does. So I could live with that, but it was more principle than it was anything else.
Right.
You know, they naturally held out. Well, I guess everybody's going to jump on the DH now.
Yeah, it's something I think that more people, once it becomes a part of the game, you're going to warm up to it eventually. I think that's probably going to be the case. At least I don't know. We're talking to Tom Dirato here on the Robert Allen and Friends show with Patrick Wheeler. So let's take a look at Oklahoma State baseball. Obviously not the outcome they wanted this past weekend as they get swept at TCU. They lost 9-8 in the first game, 8-7 in the next, and then 12-6 yesterday. So it looked like, Tom, there were plenty of runs put up. And those first 2 games, though, you lose by 1. I think that we've got some issues maybe with the pitching and the bullpen.
Well, that turned out to be the case for both teams, really. Going into this series, I thought, and I guess, you know, people in Vegas put odds on everything, but if you want to use a basketball analogy, you know, I thought TCU might be a 1-point favorite over the weekend, that they would win 2 out of the 3. but never in my mind that I think either team would sweep because they're so closely connected. There's a lot to like about both teams. There's a lot to not like, and that starts with bullpens for both teams. So I was a little stunned that we got swept. It's the first time since 2019 out of Tech when we got swept.
Wow.
Probably a little bit alarming is that we're 1-5 on the Big 12 road against two of the three teams that you feel like you're going to be battling with all year long for the top two spots, Tech and TCU. So I was, yesterday was a crushing way to put the lid on a sweep. I mean, I got to go back to basketball analogy again, but on every box score, there's that one line, time with the lead. Well, if you did that on a box score here, I mean, Oklahoma State, they had plenty of the time of the, whatever it was, 4 hours, 3.5 hours, that they led. They gave up leads of basically 4-1, 6-4, took the 6-5 into the eighth, and bang, seven runs, a grand slam from Taylor, and all of a sudden the game's over, and you're trying to figure out how we're going to get this back together. So just a cruel way of going about baseball. We know baseball can be cruel, right? And you can turn it around the other way quickly. But now you're in fourth place in the league. You're halfway home in the league play, 6-6, behind, of course, the two 10-02s, Texas and TCU, and Texas Tech, 7-5, and of course they would have the edge because they beat us 2 out of 3. So there's a lot of work to do in the second half of the year. The schedule would indicate that maybe we got a shot at getting some of that work done because, again, you got Texas this weekend, and after that you got Oklahoma for 3, you go to Kansas, you got Baylor, and those teams are certainly not top-shelf teams by any means. So you got a chance to recover, but this was a setback for sure. And the one area that's it's hard to believe, Patrick, that you could spend a weekend hitting 345 and you average 7 runs and 13 hits a game, and you don't win a game. Now, that defies belief.
Yeah, no doubt. No.
However, that means that the guys on the mound couldn't get it done, and it starts with the starters. That was one of the shortest and maybe least effective Parker Scott starts on Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
And he is so much better than that every time he goes out. But I believe he only went 4 innings, as I recall. And, our starters, he only went 4. Campbell went 6. Robleski came out, I guess, with a bad arm. Yesterday, only went 1. But our starters, they went 11 innings. Starters did. And gave up, they walked 10, and they gave up 14 hits and 10 runs. I mean, that's an 8-something ERA. So when that happens, you better have some dudes come out of the pen to shut it down. We used 12 different pitchers all weekend, and the overall ERA was 10, which is not good. But out of the pen now, it was worse. Our guys out of the pen in 3 days gave up 18 runs in 13 2/3 innings.
Whew.
Now, every time you score, they come back and score some more. And that's what you had going on. Now, I mean, their pitching staff went a whole lot better, to be honest with you.
Right.
When you hit 345 against a team. We heard about Smith. We heard about Kroger, I guess it would be. Of course, Johnny Ray was just what we thought. He wasn't very good. But, I don't think their pitching is all that good. And obviously the numbers would indicate that. But we just couldn't shut anything down. Crow, it would be, out of the pen. And that's frustrating. Saw McLean make his first appearance yesterday. If you listen to our preview that Chief and I did, well, I guess it was last Wednesday, right? I guess something like that. He threw in the fact that McLean might take the mound. Well, he did. Tough position to be in, and his problem was walks. He walked 3 in a full inning, put 3 runners on, gave up a couple of hits, and because he was the recipient of some runs when Osmond came up and gave me up the grand slam. A couple of those runners were his, but the line's not very pretty for him. So, there's a lot of, you can't overthink it. I mean, you're a baseball guy. If you overthink the thing, then you make it more than it is.
Sure.
You lost 3, okay. You know why you lost 3. And it's obvious we got to get better out of the pen, for sure. And our starters got to hang around a little bit longer and be more effective. Throw strikes. How many times have we walked them on the weekend? I'm looking here. 22 walks.
Wow.
I mean, that's a lot in over a 3-game stretch, and a lot of those 22 walks came around the score.
Right. Yeah, that's a big thing. 11 of them yesterday alone. I was looking at Nolan McLean's line, 2 hits, 4 runs, 3 walks, a couple of strikeouts in an inning. So yeah, not ideal. So clearly not the outcome you want. But when you come in now at the beginning of this week, you get Arkansas Pine Bluff tomorrow for a couple of games. Is this like one of those midweek series where you would think Oklahoma State should have a chance to maybe tighten some things up before they get back into conference play? Because like you said, it's really going to start revving up here in the conference, and if you fall behind too quickly, it can be tough to make up.
Well, you would hope that's the case. If it's not, we probably have a bigger conversation going on heading into the Texas weekend. I mean, Arkansas Pine Bluff was added late. All I have to tell you is they're 4-22, and their ERA as a team is 11.
Yikes.
Now, obviously that's SWAC, but they play some major college. They play Kansas. I think they play Kansas State. They should be. Arkansas beat them 26-1 the last time they played.
My goodness.
I mean, they're not very good, and we're bringing them in to kind of get some things straightened out. But I don't know. Tomorrow's game might be tenuous because of the weather.
Right.
Could there be a doubleheader? Steve asked me this morning. I guess they could be on Wednesday. Mm-hmm. But you want to get out there, if nothing else. I mean, you're not going to run off and pump your fists and beat your chest when you beat them 25-2. But you need to get back to feeling good about yourself, feeling better about yourself than you did coming out of Fort Worth, because there was a lot of frustration coming out of there. I mean, when you know you're as good as the team that you played, and quite frankly, I think we are, but you lose, you give up 4 home runs in the first game, that turned the tide for them. Then you lose it on a walk-off in the bottom of the ninth because you can't get it done there. And then you're in control through 7 innings, time of possession, all that stuff.
Yep.
And you give up 7 in the 8th. So,
man.
A regrettable trip to Fort Worth, a big step for TCU, and TCU's probably looking forward to us doing some damage with Texas here this week, so they can kind of slip into sole possession of first base.
Yeah, no doubt. It was a tough weekend for sure. Hopefully baseball can get back on track here tomorrow. So let me take you over to basketball here real quick. We saw on Friday, Oklahoma State landed a commit out of Syracuse coming over to transfer, Woody Newton. And he's got very little experience there in the ACC, didn't play a ton for Syracuse, power forward that likes to shoot the ball as well. What'd you think of that get for OSU basketball?
Well, to me, until I see him up close, seeing one jam doesn't give me a good feel for what he does. Certainly he's long. First blush would appear that, he wasn't physical enough to play at Syracuse.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the case, then he wouldn't be physical enough to play here until he put on some weight, right?
Right.
And we've got some guys who need to continue to do that. M.A., Caleb. I don't know that we need another guy who needs to put on weight so he doesn't get pushed around in the Big 12. So we'll see. I don't want to call him a project, but obviously he's got some skills. But I know I read a story with from Boeheim. Well, I guess his second son's coming on board to play now.
Yes, he is. Yep.
As a grad transfer, Jimmy. I think
Jimmy.
His name is. And in the story, blah 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 blah. The Boeheim senior said coming out of high school he was 6'7", 200, and Boeheim said he wasn't physical enough to play here. Well, that's about exactly as the numbers that Hunter brings, right? I mean, that's just about what he is, 6'8", and maybe a little over that. So it would appear that Jake Manzelman probably has to get after him in the weight room when he gets here. Don't know how long it'll take for him to be effective, but just first blush, without knowing how he plays, and obviously he didn't play a whole lot this past year, I need to see him in person first before I can say whether he'll be any kind of major help or not.
Yeah, that was the first thing I said as well on Friday. Is it clearly looks like he needs to get in the weight room, build up a little bit on him, and that was kind of the conclusion I drew as well with Syracuse. And I don't think it was a huge secret that he may have lacked some toughness there to play with them all the time. And he had Dolezaj in front of him, a couple guys in front of him that were highly skilled at that position. The ACC, you got to be tough down low. We know that. So we'll see what he does end up bringing to the team. The last thing I want to hit on here before I have to let you go is the new transfer stuff in college sports. We hadn't really talked about that a lot since it was officially announced with you, and that was, as you now know, not just the transfer portal, but everybody gets a waiver, basically a free opportunity to transfer and get immediate eligibility. Dick Vitale said on Twitter the other day, and this kind of obviously rang throughout the sports world, he believes it will eventually ruin the game, is what he said. I mean, is that something you're agreeing on there too, with how this is going down, or is it potentially a good thing?
Well, I'm a little reluctant to get that dramatic, to say the game's going to be ruined.
Right.
But I do think, and I'm not for this. I mean, there were reasons you had rules, right? Mm-hmm. There were reasons you had regulations in place, and I don't think the student athlete is being put upon by to fulfill a commitment, because the school committed to you. But right now, it doesn't take anything for you just to say, well, thanks, see ya. And the NCAA says I can go down the road and play, get with my rival, and like Bryce Thompson's a good example. Oklahoma State's putting a rush on him to get him. There's no doubt about that. But he's got, 20-some-odd offers to wade through. But, we could argue whether it's fair or not fair, but I do think it's out of line in terms of, especially when you talk about conference play. I just cannot get aboard that train that allows a player to jump from, one school in the conference to another. And just use this as an example. I mean, from Oklahoma State's perspective, how much complaining would there be about this rule if tomorrow the Boones figured out, I don't know that we need to stay here anymore for whatever reason. But that new coach down in Norman, he seems to be a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
So we'll see you next time we play Bedlam. We'll be wearing an OU uniform. Now, everybody thinks it's a hell of an idea. They might not think it's a hell of an idea if that would have happened. And I'm not pretending that's going to happen. I just use that as an example. So it depends on who leaves and who you get in, but I'm not for this at all. I mean, to me, it's free agency. And I don't know that college athletics was designed to be free agency. And I think the NCAA has just bent over, not backwards, but twice backwards, to say, look, we're all for the student athlete. You people have been accusing us for decades of putting upon student athletes. So now they can do anything and go anywhere at any time. Now, that to me is not what it was designed to be. So, I see where OU picked up a couple guys from Eastern Washington.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I don't know how they're as good as they look against Kansas State, the brothers, but the Groves. But, I can handle coming from another school or if you're a graduate student. But I just think, and the Big 12 caved in my opinion. There's no way you can convince coaches in the Big 12 that it's okay for players to run from one Big 12 city to another one time. I mean, coaches are not going to come out and be vocal about it, but I think you'd be hard-pressed to find too many Big 12 coaches or any coaches in any league that would be for free travel around the league, and the guy you were coaching for a couple of years or a year and investing time in and energy this year when the schedule comes out, you're going to be playing against that guy. Now, that doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I said too. Was that it's basically you're throwing a big bone over to the students. And one more thing, because I gotta get you out of here. But
Gotcha.
The last thing is I was looking at the aspect of it from, for instance, like Roy Williams retiring, Lon Kruger retiring. Do you think that what we just talked about with the transfer rules has played into that, and maybe will for some of these other coaches deciding that, look, this just isn't for me anymore? Because they didn't sign up for this now happening, and I think it's a huge adjustment you have to make as a coach. And maybe some of these old school type coaches are just either not willing to make the adjustment, or they use it as the perfect opportunity to hang it up and basically say, yeah, that's it for me.
Well, I think there's something to that. How much of that, I don't know. I mean, there are usually a lot of reasons that one retires from a job, me being included, that the public doesn't know. But I got to be honest. I mean, the coaching kids this day and age is not like it was when the guys you mentioned, Williams, Krzyzewski, Boeheim, Izzo, when they first started. This is not the way it was. Now, you could say it's better now because the student athlete has a bigger platform, bigger say-so, but these guys didn't sign up to have basically players calling the shots. And that's not the way they coach. And I would think, one day you get up and go, yeah, is this really what I want to do? Do I want to have to hug on them every day? Even when hard coaching is what I want to do, and I'm scared to death that all of a sudden I'll see their name in the portal one morning, and now I don't have them at all. So did it play into the into the decision making? I'm sure it did. Now how much, I'm not privy to that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it is a part of it a little bit, and it's just a huge adjustment. It really, really is. Tom, thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate it as always, and I will talk to you I'll talk to you tomorrow, but on the show we'll plan on it for Wednesday.
Gotcha. See you tomorrow.
All right, that's Tom Dirato. Thanks to him as always, giving good stuff on OSU baseball and much more there with the transfer news and everything as well. When we come back on the Robert Allen Friend Show, we'll put a cherry on top.